Hi, and welcome to this lecture about design processes. This time I want to talk about general engineering design. I'm going to give you the reasoning for that, because engineering design has been around for a long time. Many years, hundreds of years, people have been designing things, houses, pyramids. Things have been designed. There has a process that has evolved over hundreds, thousands of years. And it is a pretty old and refined process already because it has been around for so many years. And I think the engineering design as it is right now is still used a lot in car design, house design, all that. It is used quite a lot. And now, of course, the question is, what does it have to be with software engineering design? Well, I think software engineering design is based on the engineering process. I think maybe at the beginning when software started, when programming started, there probably wasn't such a big design process because the programs were still pretty small. But as soon as it got bigger, you needed to start about thing or not needed to plan. You needed to think about what the system needs to do exactly, how does it work, how do classes work together, and things like that. And I think the first approaches were based on knowledge from engineering processes. And a lot of the things are similar and they are needed in software engineering as well. And we're going to talk about a couple of these things, like creativity. To create a new system, independent if it is engineering or software engineering, there needs to be a certain part of creativity when you do that. You need to design, you need to make design decisions. Also true for both. You need to problem solve. You have a problem, you have user requirements, you have something the user wants, and you need to find a solution how to solve their problem. At the end, I'm going to introduce you to an engineering design process, so you have a basic understanding how the engineering process works. And then in the next module, we're going to talk specifically about software engineering, of course. Okay, let's start with creativity. What is creativity? Well, creativity is basically looking at the same thing as everyone else and thinking something different. So you want to think outside of the box. Creativity, I think, is a process that is different for everyone, but I think as is shown in that comic, for me it doesn't work to sit on my computer in a little cubicle and try to think about nice and creative ideas. Creativity, I think, is often also a group thing. It helps to discuss over problems, to discuss different things, to discuss different ideas. Some might not work out, but talk about it. Don't sit hours and think about a problem, but try to be creative, try to do something new. It always sounds weird to say, hey, be creative, but because you can turn a switch on and off. But I think there are certain ways like brainstorming, talking, explaining someone your problem to get new ideas, which are really important. There is one, let's say a little example for creativity. Here you see 6 different figures, icons, and the question is, which of these, or select one of these which is different to the other, to all the others, and explain your reasoning for it. I mean, now in this online setting, this of course is a little bit difficult, so you might want to think about it a second and then continue. But the thing is about creativity or questions like this, you can basically argue for all kinds of different things here. So maybe you're saying, okay, this one is a rectangle. It's the only rectangle you have in there. Well, you could also say, hey, this is the only triangle you have in there. Or you can say, hey, this is the only one that is completely red, filled out, and has the same lane color and fill color. Oh, no, that is not true because this one is also completely black. So this is, but you could say, hey, this is the only red one. This is the only black one. This is the only thing that kind of represents a letter. You can basically, thinking outside of the box, you can think of all kinds of reasons why each of them might be different than the others, right? And this is something that belongs to creativity, because you think of it and you might think totally different than somebody else. So creativity consists of different things. So basic domain skill. You can't think of a creative solution for something if you don't have any knowledge about a domain. You need creative thinking and working skills. So I think creativity is something that you can, or most people can, switch on or off, but I think it's something that can be practiced. And I think one thing, especially in group setting, is you need to be able to kind of blurt out your ideas. Maybe that is not something that will later on be in the design. That might not be something that you will later on implement. But first you need to generate ideas. You need to come up with ideas. They might not work, but you need to generate ideas, not be afraid to voice them, so that different decisions, different options are open to you, and that you can think about new ways how to do that. And instinct and motivation, I think for some creativity is easier than for others. Some have kind of a knack for it and they can just do it. And some don't. Some need to practice, some need to do it. It takes a lot of effort for them. And I think one factor with that, of course, is motivation. The more you're motivated, the easier it becomes to do something like that. But it's not an easy process, but we do need it for design. As I tried to explain before in the overview for this course, design, there's usually not one correct solution. It is something that you might think outside of the box, and you might create a better design than anyone else because it's totally different and has things in it that others might not even have realized. So think outside the box, try to be creative, think of different solutions. This is why creativity is so important in design and also for software engineering design, not only for engineering. So, creative thinking. How do you become creative? Like I said, it's not so easy. I think most of us have kind of habit barriers. You're kind of stuck into certain things. So one thing is, often we think there is only one right or correct answer. I think especially in the university context, this is kind of enforced. You have an assignment and it states do this and this, and you of course try to find the exact correct answer so you get full credits. Well, of course you do, right? So you think, and it's often the case, multiple choice. Often there's one correct answer. This is the learning system. We learn this, that there is one correct answer. But I think especially in design, usually you have many right answers. You might have an answer that is better than the other, or you might have answers that are really incorrect, but there might be a whole selection of ideas that are correct. So in this course, often it is the case that there is not one correct answer. So when we're talking about assignments, when we're talking about the project, it's not the one solution I'm looking for. It is, do you understand the concepts? Are you able to use the diagrams correctly? Are you able to find the right level of abstraction and use it? You can use them wrong, but many, many ways are correct. Another problem, looking at a problem in isolation. You might have a problem and you're thinking just inside that little box and you don't consider the environment, usability, so forth. And then you're isolating the problem, which hinders creativity. Following the rules. Also something we're taught, right? You have to follow the rules, you have to follow a process. I think in creative thinking, you need to break free of the rules. You need to try to think freely, think of different ideas, and it might not work. Maybe you have an idea that goes against the rules later on because it's against some laws. But it doesn't mean that you can't have the idea, which will later on be discarded. But first, the important part is generating ideas, to think outside of the box, to think of different ideas. And then maybe an idea that might not be, okay, like emissions for a car. You might have a great idea for a new engine, but it has, the whole combustion is right now so bad in your example that it will never pass a law. But maybe this idea leads to something else that will later on be great and will actually not break the rules. So I think this is important. And also remove attitude barriers. Discomfort with ambiguity. Probably kind of the same thing as a right answer. We are also kind of taught, hey, you've got to be specific, don't have ambiguity in it. Not in creativity. Try, it is totally okay if it has two meanings. Maybe that even helps later on. Negative, pessimistic thinking. I can't do that anywhere. I never have any ideas. I don't know how to do this. I'm scared to voice my opinion because my idea might be stupid. Try to get rid of this. I know this is hard. This is nothing you can turn off and on also. But try to get rid of this thinking, because in creative thinking, creating ideas, you should try to be optimistic and just voice your ideas, and maybe there's a great one in there. Risk avoidance or fear of failure. This goes into what I just said. Don't fear to fail. If you have a broad sense of ideas, a broad set of ideas, you can choose. Maybe you can combine some and have a really great idea at the end.